Hi everyone, you're very welcome to the first of the series of my talks about my new book, Rory's Story. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Dublin football star Philly McMahon. So I've really go back a good bit, which we'll get into. But listen, for anyone that doesn't know the story or hasn't obviously read the book yet, I began Rory's Stories back in 2013. I started writing blogs about myself, which turned to a Facebook page, and started doing a lot of sketches around the GAA, etc. Then 2016, I left my job and pursued Rory Stories full time, which was an interesting journey. Some highs and some lows, which are all in the book, but definitely a right choice in my life. As you know, I've been known for making people laugh with the daily sketches, especially these days with the COVID and the pandemic, etc. But I do a lot of mental health stuff, and that's the stuff I'm most proud of. You know, some of the reaction that I've gotten to the videos over the last few years, people coming up to me on the street, thanking you for the awareness you do of mental health, and that certainly means the world to me. It means more than comedy, genuinely, because you're changing people's lives and people's outlook on their own life. So, as I said, the four main pillars of the book are mental health, addiction, the importance of sport, and the highs and lows of chasing the unknown. So, as I said, I'll kick off with Philly today. Me and Philly, as I said, go back a good while. So I'll let Philly tell you how we know each other anyway.
Yeah, now you might jump in, Rory, at any stage that you might correct me, but I think we first met when we were playing as kids. I was playing for Ballymun, obviously you were playing for Dublin, and basically there was four lads hanging out. You're still the same size you are today. You're 6'4" at the age of 10 or 11 or something like that, and it was about four or five lads hanging out with you. So that's how we first met you. It was the joint of Ashbourne playing Ga, and then that followed throughout the years. That we tried to get you back. We tried to get you to come up to Ballymun Kickums to play for us because we had two mutual friends in the Heelys. Unfortunately, that never happened. It would have been great to have you playing for Ballymun and hopefully Dublin in the future. And we know you love the Dubs. And then that kind of, I think it led into us playing against each other, Dublin and Meath in the development squads. And it's the exact same thing. This huge fella in midfield. And all you used to hear was Rory's ball. And you just had to make sure you got him on the way down because you were never going to beat him with the height of him. And then, we met in college, and that was probably the craziest time we've probably had together. So it's been an amazing journey that, school, juvenile football all the way through to college, to us meeting regularly enough, going for food every couple of weeks to speak about addiction and mental health and speak about kind of the careers we have. It's been an unbelievable journey, to have a Meath mate like that,
I walked into Clostida and I just see this fella, with a mohawk and a pair of pink Timberland boots on him, fancied himself. And, I knew Philly, how you feel what's cracking? I was this big Meath munchie, as he called me, up the back. But what was amazing about that, and I met Philly the night Dublin won the 5 in a row, and I said it to him, and we just had this kind of moment going, wow, so this was 2005, right? And if you were to look at that class and say, do you see that fella there with the mohawk, that fella? Yeah, see him. And you see that big lad at the back there, yeah. So on the very same day, what we talking, Philly, 14 years later, that man will have won his 7th All-Ireland medal with Dublin, and that fella will be playing in a full house in Vicar Street as a comedian. And that, as it transpired, that's what happened. And then you could say, and you see the girl in the middle row, yeah, that fella at the back, he marries her. So and that's my wife, Emma, because Emma was in our class in Clostida, and that's how I met Emma. So we talk a lot about addiction, Philly, which, as you know, like with you, with John, your brother, God rest him, and the path he went on. I remember telling you, Philly, about my teddy bear a few years ago. And I told him, in a confidential-ish enough way. But then I was at another function a week later, and a fella was like, "Jeez, Rory, I was at Philly McMahon talking. He was saying about your teddy bear. You still half much like that." Bollocks.
Sorry, I couldn't hold it in. It's just a brilliant story.
No, it is and people that don't know, hadn't read the book, I got a young teddy bear when I was born off my auntie Catherine, born in Rotunda, And this Teddy just became a part of me, you know. I talk about leaving him on holidays and going nuts until my dad got him back, couldn't go anywhere without him. And just like, in case people think I'm waffling, I brought him in here to say hello to you. All right, what's the story? So this is Ted, right? Now, Ted is the most battle-hardened teddy bear you'll ever meet. Look, he's stuffed with old socks, old Nike and Adidas socks. He has no nose because he's always getting the flu, so I just chopped his nose off. And then he has his eyes and he has his ears. I tell you, if this lad could talk, he'd tell some stories. Like, but like, as Philly was saying, like, and when I was doing the book with Dermot Crowe, like, we talked about addiction, and my inhaler with my asthma was obviously a very easy indication. And even now, like, I mightn't need my inhaler, but I have to have it on me. I'm addicted to it. And same with the teddy bear, like, he's still in the house, and like, when we were moving, my wife wanted to put him into a container, and I says, good one, he's coming into the bedroom. So Philly, just to get, like, I know you've spoke so much about it, and it's so refreshing, but from your point of view, do you think, am I on the right road, or you feel basically about you can develop addictive personalities from a young age? What's your thought on that, like?
You definitely can, and you can. I suppose there's the argument: is it biological, or is it inherited basically from your environment? And there's arguments for both of those. Like, your case would be, you obviously had that impulse of wanting that teddy bear, which became the inhaler, which became your addiction then further down the line, which I'm sure you'll discuss more of. So the big issue we have, Rory, is that we will never be able to we'll never get rid of drugs. There's never been a civilization in this planet that hasn't had drugs involved in it, right? Let's think of that for a second. So having that kind of war on drugs, it was the stupidest thing that Americans ever thought of, and that we inherited around Europe. So for me, it's very important that we realize that we can't actually combat drugs unless we combat mental health, okay? Because when we have childhood trauma, when we have young people that, let's say, where it stemmed from, it could stem from cycles of the Catholic Church sexual abuse, to TB, what else? The mental health epidemic that we have and we understand more of now, so we're diagnosing it more. The drug epidemic, and then we have the COVID epidemic and technology epidemic. There's loads of them, but they all have, they all link into mental health, and they all link into a thing that I actually start to delve into a little bit more, called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And these experiences will impact basically the pathway you take in life. So you could, if you have a thing, if you have 4+ ACEs, so if you were sexually abused when you were younger, you'll have 4+ ACEs, and 4+ ACEs will generally, the stats will show that you will actually go down the pathway of drug addiction, criminality, maybe have a child at a very young age, end up in prison, all of those kind of, that negative pathway. So we have a huge amount of, we have a huge gap in terms of social inequality in this country. So we have lower class communities that are miles and miles away from the middle class and upper class. And that has a huge effect on mental health and a huge effect on drug addiction. So I want to give you one example, right? If I asked you the question, Rory, the reason why Ballymun was destroyed was the government's fault, what would you say? Now, you don't have to agree with me, like, but if I said,
like, I would have, like, my opinion on, like, when I was growing up, like, we were all terrified of Ballymun. That's the truth. When we played them under in games, and I remember we get to Evening Herald and see the fixture and be like, oh my God, Ballymun away, oh, for sake, like, you know. And I remember going in there and seeing the flats, and like, it had a massive stigma too, and you know that yourself, like, and that where it was a rough place where bad eggs were hung around, and if you went to Ballymun, you were going to get robbed, like, and that's the way it was, you know.
Yeah, and I want to give you a bit of context around that, because that's what a lot of people think. It's just bad people. People aren't born bad, they're not. So in 1985, when Ballymun was built, late 60s and early 70s, and in 1985 there was a national surrender grant, okay? So that was basically a grant that would give people 5,000 punt at the time to move out of Ballymun. Okay, so you get 5,000 to move out, and at that stage, that was about 25% of buying the home back then. Okay, so anybody that could afford to buy a home in Ballymun took that option and moved out. They moved to Kilbarrack, Tallaght, all these areas, right? So what was left in Ballymun was people that were non-economical stable residents, right? So the vacant units that were left there from these people moving out, who were the people that were working, that financially could afford their homes, the people that were left were single parents, homeless men. There was at that stage, there was a huge amount of people that struggled with their mental health, especially from psychiatric hospitals. So there was actually people discharged from psychiatric hospitals that were closed down and put into Ballymun. So realistically, Ballymun was ghettoized, and basically that was from the government. So when you put all these people into the one area, right, you're only going to get one outcome. You know, you're going to get people realizing that Ballymun is a very lucrative area to sell drugs, right? You look at Ballymun, you go, oh, it makes sense to sell drugs in there. Why? There's so many people that are struggling. They will use that drug to overcome pain, psychological pain. And that basically became very lucrative, as I said, huge amount of drug dealers, huge amount of people taking drugs because they didn't understand their psychological need to underline an issue. And after that came crime because of fear, because, you know, violence comes with drugs. So we have the rich getting richer all the time, the poor getting poorer. And the more that happens, the more mental health issues we have, and the more drug addiction we'll have as well.
You tell a great story, Philly, in your book, and you've told me this before the book, about going to visit somewhere with the Sam Maguire and Ballymun, and the young fella goes, oh, you're your man off the telly, and you're like, oh yeah, but you're from Ballymun, how could you be famous? Like, yeah. And you sat down and you spoke to this young lad for whatever amount of time. But I always remember that story because it's like, I can relate to that from a wider scale. It's like, you know, when I was growing up, it's always, you know, go to school, go to college, you know, get a pensionable job, get a mortgage, and then that's you. Like, we were never told that you could be extraordinary, you could be something different. Like, and that's why I talk a lot about the importance of teachers and role models like yourself in Ballymun, because now there's young people in Ballymun that seen you win that Dublin Championship a couple of weeks ago, looking, saying, I want to be the next Phil McMahon, I want to be the next whoever, you know, Dean Rock or whoever James McCarthy may be, and the importance of that. And it is like, it's great that you had the vision, like, to see that, like, because you go up there and you said, right, we need to go in this direction. And that's, like, obviously great leadership qualities that you have. But regarding that with the drugs, Philly, like, I think you'll probably have to agree here that the cocaine is just ridiculously popular at the minute, and it's actually normalized. Like, I tried to tell my dad that like, you can't even, like, look down on people who do coke anymore. It's just like smoking cigarettes. So when I was younger and I used to smoke a bit of hash, and my mum would catch me, like, oh, before you know, you'll be on heroin. Like, it was just the way, you know, that it starts with hash, ecstasy, heroin, and then coke, heroin. So, like, what's your thoughts on coke being so popular among young people? Like, you know what I mean? Because, you know yourself, really, it's like, oh, you're going for 2 points, yeah, I have to get a bag first, and they won't have a point without having a bag in their pocket. And that's not Ballymun, that's not Dublin, that's the length and breadth of the country. I know that myself. So what's your thoughts on it, like?
To be honest, Rory, I'd probably talk for 3 days on this topic, like, you know, because it's so...
Give us 3 minutes.
it's so complex, you know. And I try to get around the country to try to educate as many people as I can from my experience and what I've learned. But the problem we have is that drugs aren't the issue. Alcohol is not the issue. The issue is the abuse of those. And by no means am I sitting here saying take drugs and take alcohol and gamble and do everything else. I'm not. It's a game of Russian roulette. You know, most people that are struggling psychologically or have that underlying impulse don't really recognize it, and it's very dangerous. So we have a huge amount of people. So just in terms of cocaine is now the second most taken drug in this country. You know, so you've got alcohol and then you've cocaine, and then you've got grass and hash, that which was second. So the problem you have is we have a huge amount of people experimenting, young people. We have a huge amount of people who struggle. We have more deaths from alcohol than any other drug abuse. So alcohol is the biggest killer. And the problem we have is that when you are an individual experimenting, you don't know if you're that person that's going to be struggling and want to chase that buzz all the time. So the process in all addictions is the very same. So even if you have, I've said to you, Rory, numerous times, we're all addicts. We all chase the high. We all chase this constant quick fix and high. So you feel a certain way, you take something to make you feel something, whether that's buy a handbag, live in a certain house, buy a car, or if it's drugs or gambling or whatever it is, it's the same process. The outcome is initially you feel really good from it, but after it, you know, the aftermath is very bad and you keep chasing it and chasing it. And that's what we've been kind of brainwashed into. The most dangerous one at the minute is technology, is social media. Chasing your like, it's meant to be a positive thing. So Facebook created this like so that it was positive, but actually it's negative now. It's become a negative thing because people know that negativity sells. So when you take a picture of somebody, let's say, that is in a bad, vulnerable place, you get loads of likes and you keep chasing that. So for me, the dangers is that you don't know if you're that person. And there's about 10% of the population that are experimenting or have taken alcohol and drugs that will become addicts. Now, if you're that person, you're going to go down that cycle of, you know, you'll smoke maybe at the start, you'll then go on to cannabis and hash. Cocaine, obviously, skip that cycle. Cocaine probably is the next step to alcohol, and then eventually you're taking these and you're taking drugs to come down. You're taking that much cocaine, and then all of a sudden someone says, "Take that sleeping tablet that'll make you come down off coke," and it's not doing it for you. And then all of a sudden you need something. You know that it's so tough to come off that drug. You're such a high that you start taking heroin. So that cycle is different to what my brother John went through years ago, because he would have went through a cycle of hash, acid was actually big back then. Cocaine wasn't really in the country at that stage. Ecstasy tablets were massive because of the rave scene, and then heroin. So for me, for young people, there's a huge amount of them that will take drugs and they'll be okay. They will come off drugs, they'll mature. Unfortunately, they will always have that brand around them. So it's not a nice thing to carry forward into your family in your future, that someday some kid could come up to you and say, "My daddy said that your daddy was taking cocaine," or something like that. Yeah. That's a very hurtful thing, and I've seen that happen. So that carries with you for the rest of your life. If people ask me, "How did you stay away from drugs, Philly?" Well, I seen first of all the pain and suffering John went through. I didn't want that. If you've seen someone go through pain, you wouldn't do the same thing that they did. And then when I developed, obviously, the life skills through sport, that helped me massively, and that gave me a vehicle to push all the negative energy I had into something. So sport, in many ways, is my saviour. But having seen the pain and suffering, that was ultimately what stopped me going down that pathway. Because Rory, you know as well as I do, I have mates that are in prison for murder, for target kidnapping, for robberies, for drug dealing. I've been in houses at the age of 60 and 70 and where there's been cocaine all over the place, and I could have easily went down that pathway. But again, having my brother, you know, go through that and having sport, it was an easy option for me.
I remember being in a friend's house when I was 16, 17, they were all doing pills, as you said, because it was all like the rave, God's kitchen, all that stuff, and I was kind of in that circle. But I remember having an e-tablet on me, looking at it, and all the boys were popping them like Skittles, and then I just looked at it, and it just, again, that whole, you could be that one person who gets the bomb and you're gone. And that fear scared me, because I didn't want to take that risk, and I didn't do it, and that was the end. That was the closest I came to, and that was me. But you just touched on something really good there, which I think we don't really have enough time. No one has to talk about how big of an issue this is. And you're right about the social media addictive part, and with the likes and that, because I know myself, like I'm a full-on addict with everything I do. If I like something, I go at it, and that could be chocolate, that could be exercising, that could be alcohol, that could be golf, that could be, you know, whatever. And Rory Stories is my ultimate addiction, but I struggle with that as well, because you know, you might make a video that's viral and 1,000,000 views, and then I'm trying to chase that again. And I'm trying to, you know, and I could get a video that does unbelievably well to everyone else bar me. Like, you know, this could have like 250,000 views. I'm like, oh, that was shit. People obviously are not enjoying the videos anymore. And then I start to get this arm wrestling in my own mind, which is completely in my own head. But that's a kind of, I still look at it as a positive, because it's just, you know, I'm entertaining people, but it's still something I need to manage myself and not get too engrossed by it. But I look at my daughter, who's nearly 8, Ella, and now we control her TikTok, but TikTok is huge at the minute. And even during the pandemic, she'd be doing all this, and I own the account, but she would post odd one on it, and then come look, Dad, this got 9 likes, like, oh my God. And why did the other one get 7? And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go. Like, do you know what I mean? And she's 8. And we're very lucky, Philly, when we were growing up, that we weren't kind of in the public eye like that. And by public mind, I mean everyone is in the public eye, because you're putting yourself on social media. And I try and say this a lot when I do talks in schools now, is you need to you know, like, don't be bogged down. If it's not for you, like, if it's causing too much mental health issues or too much worrying, just delete the app, you know what I mean? Because the world's going to go on anyway, like, and it'll be better for you, you know? So it's just interesting how you touched on that. So as I said, Philly, you were talking there about the importance of sport. So I'm just going to read a small little passage out of the book. It's in the chapter where I talk about kind of struggling with street life and that. So it's like, realising that I was a fairly good footballer encouraged me to train more. It made me feel better about myself. Suddenly I had a purpose. Football became my addiction. The troubles I had in school were still there, but my final years doing the LCA were helping restore some of the confidence I had lost along the way. Football did me the world of good during those years. I loved exercise because it gave me that endorphin rush to make me feel better. In hindsight, it was my medication. So, like, that's for me when I went from the age of kind of around the big 6'4" that was being bet up by all the Ballymun lads back in the day. And I suddenly realised, geez, I'm actually all right at this, and I trained harder, and it led me on to captain the county minors now, it was a great achievement at the time. But for you, Philly, like, obviously Paddy Christie, you know, everyone would know from the documentary, was a huge part of that. And how important do you feel? Because how many lads I know, definitely, and you know, that get into this and they're training every day, and they could be playing soccer in England, or they could be playing for Meath or Dublin, and then all of a sudden they just hit that age where they're gone, and then all of a sudden they're in trouble with drugs, they're in trouble with drink. So what's your kind of thought on maintaining that? And
the longer obviously the individual stays in sport, the better chance they have in terms of a pathway, like, especially in Ballymun, like, you know, and definitely with our clubs. But for me, what was key was having a really smart coach in Paddy Christie. And some of the external kind of stuff he would have done was just, you only kind of really respected when you reflect back now, you know. So even for him to go into school and call you out of your classroom just made you that a bit of a, you know, you felt more important, you know. And that's what a lot of these kids needed in Ballymun. They needed to feel important. They needed someone to give them confidence. And those things were massive, like, you know. So the amount of external hours Paddy Christie put into the group that we had was just incredible. He used to bring, and you wouldn't even see it today, Rory, he would have brought me and Davy Bourne down to Dublin training to kick the balls back. Like, nobody would be able to do that now.
Yeah.
You know, you could imagine you asking Jim Gavin or Desi Farrell, can we bring 2 young fellas in to kick the balls back? Like, no, we have men to do that now.
Yeah.
Like, so what he done and the time and effort he put into everybody, and he'll say it himself, there was a few lads, unfortunate, that he couldn't do anything for, that, as you said, they got a taste of that life, and that was, you know, they could ultimately have just had a bad week in training, or they felt like, oh, this is not for me, and then all of a sudden they've a better opportunity. And that's the big thing I talk about a lot, is communities and GA clubs just constantly giving opportunities, you know, and asking the questions. Like, one thing I would say if I ever went into coaching a young team would be, why are people dropping off? you know, and actually clubs looking at attrition rates. You know, that's when you look at clubs in Dublin, they're like some of their membership bases are massive. So for Ballymun, we are a quite small club, and it's good in a way because we focus on smaller groups and pushing them through. But when you compare that to the amount of people slipping through the net through a club that has 3 teams at one age, you know, they could be a different social class. But for us, if we had that, it would be destroying for the area, because Ballymun Kickums and all the other sports clubs in the area do massive work. Because Rory, every time we stop somebody going through that pathway, let's say that my brother John went through, we actually saved the government probably in around €1 million. For example, if I didn't play football and I went to Oberstown, I'd be spending the government would be spending €340,000 a year on me. And if I spent 2 years there and 5 years in Mountjoy, which is 90,000 a year for each prisoner, you're up to $1 million. Then your next your sibling, you know, your brother or sister could be next, because that's the way it happens in terms of a cycle. The one key thing, if there's coaches listening in on this, is ask the question always why, and never give up on the individual. Even if they're doing your head in, even if it's stress for you, your objective, I would say, for me as a club, is to not get these, like, all these objectives, get these to senior football. Not really, just keep them playing sport. And if that leads to senior football, great. But get them past an age of 18 or 19 where they have a bit more maturity to not go down the pathway of drugs and criminality.
Even with like the addiction to sport, Philly, like, so you're my age, and you're 33 now, would that be right? Yeah. So you have like 7 All-Ireland medals, you have your couple of Dublin championships, you have your All-Stars. Like, in other words, you don't have to prove anything to anyone regarding on a football field. You've done it all, as they say. So why do you feel you need to go back on the Dublin camp again this year? Like, why, like, you know what I mean? Like, is that addiction to sport? Do you need that in your life to keep your head right, or what do you think? Like,
I wouldn't say it's an addiction. For me, it's an enjoyment. It's a hobby, and it's one of those things that maybe you're addicted to the thought of that it doesn't last forever, and that it's coming close, and that you need to.
I hope it doesn't last forever, anyway.
But you want to enjoy it while it lasts, and for me, Rory, it's not like at one stage it would have been to be successful in terms of playing for Dublin and wearing the jersey, and then when we won our first, it's trying to win our second. But after I won the third one in 2015, it became a purpose in life, you know. For me, it was all about, you know, developing that purpose and using the sport using the sport and profile as a way of helping others, you know. That's, for me, to have somebody call me brother a junkie in an All-Ireland semi-final and tell me that he died of a drug overdose, that day was the day that I realised I had something deeper inside me that was worth more than anything in my career in terms of money and houses, and that was the big thing that just stepped outside me, I suppose. And for me, every time you go back and play football, that you know you can give energy to people through your profile, you know, and I think that's key.
Yeah, like the young fella sitting on the curb in Ballymun, that I can relate to that a lot, Philly, because like I love nothing more than going back to, say, an LCA class or going into a youth reach centre and being like, listen, lads, I was very bad in school. I didn't understand school. I can show you numerous letters of being suspended, and everyone written me off school. I have no leaving cert. I didn't want it, but I'm a best-selling author. I've done shows, like I've been on RT, like, and like that, like you said, and I speak about it in the book. Like my comedy or career, whatever you want to call it, is inspired by being that person that the young people in school can say, well, ma'am, look at Rory, like, you know, Rory's struggling. And it's very similar to your story. Like, you're not, yes, like, you know, half a dozen of ever All-Ireland medals is unbelievable, and that'll always be there. But I know exactly what you mean. You're not hunting it for that. It's to have more armor on your shoulder to say to these young people, listen, this is what you can do if you put down that joint, or you put down that drink or whatever, and come in this direction. And I'm a similar story. That's why we get on so well with each other, is because we're passionate about the youth, and people having role models to look to and say, well, listen, here's these two guys that could have easily been in prison, overdosed, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? So that's why we connect with each other so well. Right, so Philly, we're after getting a lot of messages via social media and emails, etc. So we just picked out a few that a couple are directed at me and a couple are directed at you. But if you want to obviously add to whatever I say, feel free. So this is a message from Kyle. How has lockdown affected your mental health, and how have you dealt with it? Personally, it definitely did. Obviously, like everyone have an effect on my mental health. But for me, especially during the lockdown, I felt that routine was key. Like, so I was getting up most mornings, doing a workout, whether it be in my back garden or going for a run, kind of eating food at the right time. Like, it was Groundhog Day. It was horrible for everyone, but just, you know yourself, lapping your hometown and saying hello to the same people. And like, we're nearly having crack in my house, guessing what time exactly, what point we would see people at. Everyone had their own routine, but for me, it definitely worked anyway. Just keeping something to look forward to each day, to just, right, I'll do this and I'll do that until we get out of the hairy days. I don't know, Philly, you were probably similar routine-ish, was there?
Yeah. Like the one thing for me was actually developing a little thought around it, Rory. You know, like, so for me, I've been very lucky in my life to have all of these events that maybe most people will think they're negative, and they are negative, a lot of them, but there's an outcome of them that are positive, like, you know. So for me, I just had in my head the word opportunity. What's the opportunity in this? And in 10 or 15 years, you look back and you say, we went through a pandemic, and what did you do? Like, what was the big thing that'll stick in my head was the opportunity. Like, for me, again, structure, as you said, a lot of the stuff, I would have done exercise extra, would have done a bit of meditation, yoga for the mindfulness side of things. And generally tried to contact a lot of people. I said to myself, the opportunity is now, Philly, that you're probably having the opportunity of more time to speak to people, where I would have been struggling with work and football at that stage. So that was the big thing for me, get that thought process of opportunity.
A lot of questions are similar, Phil. Like one from Adam there, like, how do you deal with bad days / stressful situations? So it kind of covered that in our talks, like with the routine and exercise, etc. And again, as I always say, not being afraid to admit that you're having a bad day. Like, you know, don't try and bottle it up yourself. Just ring someone and say, listen, I'm struggling today. How are you? And you'd be amazed that, you know, I always relate mental health to football. So say if I'm playing a match, if I'm not playing well, I'm not going to shout into Philly and cornerback, Philly, get tired. Come on, we need you, like, because I need to do my job. And, you know, if I am playing well and Philly's struggling in the corner, then I can say, Philly, come on, next ball, because I'm doing my job in the field. And that mental health is very similar. So, you know, if you're struggling yourself, you can't be helping everyone else around you. You need to put your hand and say, today's not my day. My man's winning a few balls off me. Will you mind having a chat with me today and getting me going? And like, it's a simple analogy to relate football to mental health. And that's what I use. So if you're not having a good day, your mate could be, you know, the sun could be shining on him, and ring him, and he'll hopefully say a couple of words that might uplift you a bit, you know. So this is from John. It's hi Rory. At present, I am unemployed and suffering massive depression due to the COVID pandemic, and I would greatly appreciate some advice from you as to what I can do to help myself. Thank you, John. Philly, I'll let you kind of go in with that one there. To start off with. Like,
well, the first thing is that I'm going to try and make it simple, but mental health is not simple. It's very complex, like addiction, you know. It's a very complex issue, and everybody's different. But for me, I think we have to understand the biology of who we are as human beings. That's a huge one for us in terms of the new education we need around mental health. There's 9 contributors to mental health, whether it be anxiety or depression. There's 9 contributors, okay? 7 of them are societal, and 2 of them are biological. Okay, so 7 of them we as human beings create. Okay. For example, John, who now is uncertain about his financial circumstances, that's societal. That's us creating that. So if that's the case, well, then ultimately we can be the solution. So we come up with we're the problem, we can be the solution. So I think it's key for us to have tribes, Rory. You had a great analogy about the cornerback and your teammate and having good days and bad days. Brilliant. And that's what we need. We need tribes. So first of all, we need to understand that there's nobody in this planet that's ever going to have a life that has no adversity, that has no pain and suffering. There's nobody. This is who we are as people. We are going to have pain and suffering. And when we realize that negative emotions means that we need to solve them, when we solve that problem, we get positive emotions. So everything we do in our everyday life is about solving problems. Everything you do in work, your relationships, sport, you're just solving problems. You solve one problem, the door opens for another. Okay? So we are not born angry people. We are not born with depression. We're not born with anxiety. We gather these things societally as we get older, right? Okay? So there's a lot of us that cross over in terms of our experiences. So obviously having somebody with peer guidance, somebody that's went through it, has a huge impact, because I'll tell you, I've had more people reach out to me, I'm sure you have, Rory, to reach out to me to talk about drug addiction than probably reaching out to psychologists. Yeah. I've had people reach out to me and I've said to them, can I refer you on to a psychologist to speak about that issue? And they'd say, I prefer to speak to you, because that's peer guidance. So someone that's been there and done that. And that's why we need to have more recovering addicts. That's why we need to have more people from survivor suicide, people that have went through the mental health process, that understand what they're doing. And the more we have of that, the more that changes the norm. That yes, it's okay to have struggles in your life. It's okay to have depression. It's okay to have anxiety. Learn from it and move forward in a way that's going to impact your life positively. And don't chase positivity. That's one of the big things I think that's we're so indulged by. So John is saying, I have depression. That's him basically saying, I need a way out. Don't chase that way out. Understand why you've got depression. So your issue is work. Okay, that's a problem that needs to be solved. You're going to have to day by day try get that problem solved. And I guarantee you, when John solves that problem of employment, he'll think back and he'll go, why the hell was I actually that depressed about it? Or it's like when you have the flu and you're like, oh, I'm in bits now and this is never going to end. 3 or 4 days later, you look back and you go, why was I actually whinging about that? I'm actually all right. I'm not saying people are whinging at their mental health, but what I'm saying is, ultimately, we have to understand our psychology. And we have to understand that this is who we are. And that someday you look back and you go, that actually helped me. No different to when my brother John passed, all the pain and suffering I had for around 4 or 5 years until I wrote the book, which helped me grieve, that when I look back, I went, I can take something from this and I can use it as something positive by talking about it. So I think that's the key message for me. Don't chase positivity. Pain and suffering is going to be inevitable. It's who we are as human beings. And it's how you use that adversity that's going to make you and shape you.
Yeah, no, like you hit the nail on the head. You know, you went to college anyway above me, Philly. Like, in fairness, like I must get a tutoring day with you one day. But I understand everything you said there, and it's very true. It's like, you know, when you are going through them dark days, and I do myself, and it's say, for instance, I put it on social media, like, you know, because I know there's a lot of people that follow me and all. And then when I'm out of that dark place, I'd be going, oh, why did I put that on social media? I'm raging myself, like I didn't need to do that. But I realise it's just showing vulnerability, which is acceptable. You know what I mean? That it is all right to have them days, and they do pass. So I think Philly's right, John. If you just like kind of go back to the drawing board and see, right, what can I do now to start with getting back working again? Like, it mightn't be exactly what you want to do, but it's just getting the mind active again. Like, and as I said, it's just accepting like that you are going to have poor days, and everyone's going to have poor days during 2020 is not a nice year to be on the earth, we'll say, because of everything, the negativity that's surrounding the coronavirus. But the key thing is, as Philly said, is like, don't be chasing the positive all the time. Like, you know what I mean? You have to accept, right, how can I manage this myself? Like, and a lot of it comes back to your own self-awareness. Like, am I sleeping enough? Am I exercising enough? Am I cutting down on alcohol? Am I cutting down on whatever else it may be? And just going back to the drawing board and hopefully, you know, it will pass. So, listen, that's all the time we have for today's chat. I hope people take the time to sit down and listen to it. I think Philly definitely made a lot of really good points there in all sorts of, especially around addiction and sports. So I hope people take something from it. Just want to thank Philly for coming on board. You know, top man as always. Please God, Meath can get a good start and beat us in the league on Saturday with a bit of luck, to say. But listen, so that's the book, folks. Rory's story, very honest. As people who do know me, like, I didn't hold back. Like Philly's book, The Choice. I hope people take something encouraging from it. And it is available in all Easton stores and all major bookstores all across the country. And you can get it, as I said, on eastons.com as well, pre-order, because, as I said, I know the shops are difficult to get to. So, listen, thanks very much. And thanks again, Philly. And we'll see you for the next series. Good luck.
Thanks, Rory.